Hi, I'm Brian Ahearn, Chief Influence Officer at Influence People, LLC. And the best advice I think I've ever gotten is luck is where preparation meets opportunity.
Welcome to the Inside Sales Show hosted by Phil Gerbershak. Each episode will take you behind the scenes with a sales expert or a sales practitioner and go inside the nuances you need to be successful today in sales and sales leadership. We'll have conversations about the mindset, skill set, and tool set of highly successful sales professionals, offer insights into prospecting, qualifying, following up, closing sales for inside sales professionals, and hiring, firing, motivation, and rewarding your team for inside sales leaders. And we will find out what's working and what's not working for inside sales pros right now. And now, here's your host of the Inside Sales Show, sales speaker, sales trainer, and pinball wizard, Phil Gerbershak.
Hey, Brian, it's great to see you again. How are you?
I am really well, and it's great to be back with you, Phil.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm so glad you're here, man. This is really cool. So, been a little while, so congrats on book number 2, right? Persuasive Selling for Insurance Pros, man. That's great. I'm really happy for you. And it's a great book, so congrats.
Thank you. I'm really excited. Coming out with the first book was an amazing feeling, but I think the second book you appreciate even more what it actually takes. So really excited about it.
Awesome. That's great. Well, you should be. So this one is really, really locked into sales, which I love, which I know our viewers will love here today. But talk to me first. I think the first question I've got is what the heck is sales to you, Brian? Because I think it's a different thing than it is to many people.
It is. And I worked at a company where we had a slogan, everybody sells. And that was to promote the fact that everything that we did could have a positive or a negative impact on the company. And we needed to be conscious of that if we wanted employees to work for us, if we wanted agents to represent us, if we were going to do the best job possible. I look at sales a little differently in that selling is part of persuading. Persuading is larger, and selling is a part of it. And I really look at selling as the exchange of goods, products, or services for something monetary. But persuading can be much larger. Persuading can be trying to convince people to go along with your idea. There's no money exchange, but you're still having to change behavior.
Awesome. Well, I love that. I think that's important, that behavior change. I've said my whole life pretty much that, hey, I'm a sales guy, even though I worked in IT, even though I worked in marketing, even though I run my own company. I've found that sales is really everything that we have. So it's good to have that level set here. So folks, if you're listening, you're watching, you're thinking, oh, I'm not sure if this is for me. I'll tell you what, it doesn't matter if you're in insurance or not. This book, Brian smartly, though, did target the book at insurance folks because that's his background, and I would say that certainly can do it. So, Brian, one of the things I love, though, is you also say that sales is a noble profession. Mm-hmm. Talk to us a little bit about that. Let's set that up, and then I've got a bunch of questions for you about the book.
Having come out of the insurance industry, insurance is a noble profession, one, because at the end of the day, you help people. If people have a good agent, they've purchased the right products and services from a reputable company, and a loss happens, they're thankful for that insurance agent and that insurance company. And to really scale this down, Phil, to make it as simple as possible, I remember when my daughter was about 8 years old, and we were in bed and we had done some reading, and then we were talking, and I said, Abigail, did you see the story on the news about the tornadoes? And she said, yes. And I said, if those people have insurance with our company, we're going to get them new cars, we're going to rebuild their homes, and those kids are going to get their toys back. An 8-year-old can understand that. So insurance, we help people. We also help the economy because ultimately, nobody's going to loan you a lot of money to buy a house, to start a business, or do any number of other things if you cannot guarantee that you'll repay them if something bad happens. So because of the guarantee, more homes are sold, cars are sold, and all that ripple effect that happens. And it all really starts, though, with selling. Getting somebody to understand the value proposition of what you're offering them, that's what becomes the noble part of this as well.
Awesome. I dig that. I think that makes a lot of sense to me. And I love the two-sided there. Win-win, help, really all of that stuff. so key. So as you're writing this book, though, I like that you lead off with some acronyms, and I like that you lead off. Anthony Iannarino writes the foreword, who's one of my favorite sales guys. So clearly, he knows that this book is going to be valuable. But talk to us about Sales Rocks. I think big things that I took away from the beginning, and it really helped us level set throughout the whole book. What does that mean? And let's spell that out so people can get it.
So when I talk about rocks, that's an acronym for you're trying to build rapport or relationship right off the bat when you're in selling. You're not going to get very far if somebody doesn't like you. Then you're going to have to deal with objections. So the O is objection handling. The C is closing the sale. If you do a good job, you've built that rapport, if you've dealt with the objections. And then the K is keep selling. And the S is setting the stage for referrals, because ultimately you want to come back and you want to gain from that client, hopefully, some quality referrals that you can go out and start the whole sales cycle again.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the C and the S or the K and the S are the two that people miss the most, right? Keep selling, keep prospecting, keep going, don't quit. Sales is not a static sport; it's absolutely active. And then the whole bit about setting the stage for referrals is so valuable, right? That's how we behave, always in integrity, and it's where I believe that influence is not manipulative. It is really a gift that we have. So talk to us about that, Brian, because I bet you've had some pushback from folks saying, no, I don't want to manipulate people, but I sure like to eat.
Well, manipulating really comes down to being unethical in terms of maybe not telling the truth or putting out an offer that's really good for you but not good for the other person. And when I talk about non-manipulative ways to influence people, I'd just like to break it down to this, Phil. Good for you, good for me, then we're good to go. If what I know I'm putting out there is going to help you, even though it's going to help me maybe by gaining a commission, new sales, and things like that, I can still feel completely okay because I know that I'm helping you. And as long as I'm doing this in a way where I'm being truthful and I'm only using psychology that is natural to the situation that we're in, right? And it's a win-win type situation, then it's not manipulation. And if the salesperson does a good job, I think the client, the customer should be able to say, thank you. I'm glad that you were part of this transaction because you brought to light things that I didn't understand about this, and I might have dismissed this opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Now, your mic going a little bit weak there, so let's maybe you might need to move that up just a hair there. Let's check that out. But as we talk about this, right, as we talk about persuasive selling, I think it's really important to talk about the elements of persuasion and how that actually plays out. Because I know we talked about that last time, but a lot of people I know, they don't look back and maybe they're unfamiliar with that. So talk to us about Dr. Cialdini and the work that you've done to be certified and why that's changed your life as a sales professional.
Okay. Well, Robert Cialdini was a Regents professor at Arizona State University, taught there for more than 3 decades, and he's the most cited living social psychologist in the world when it comes to this topic of the science of influence or the psychology of persuasion. And when I first came across his work, the light bulb came on. I knew immediately what he's talking about, this psychology, it's the foundation of selling. It explained why certain sales approaches work and why some didn't. And so I was involved with sales training with the insurance company at that time. And when that light bulb came on, I decided this is something I'm going to incorporate into the sales training that I was doing. And it was really by complete chance, Phil, that Robert Cialdini and I ultimately connected. I had come across his work when a coworker gave a videotape to me, and it was him presenting at Stanford. And they couldn't have been more clear about non-manipulative ways to get people to do things. Well, I signed up for Stanford's marketing because his video was great, and then I saw some other really good resources. But one day, one of the Stanford flyers came to my desk, and it said, call it influence, persuasion, or even manipulation. And I thought, I cannot believe they actually used that word. Who would, in their right mind, would think that somebody would want to be manipulated or want to be a good manipulator? So I sent an email to Stanford to basically say that, you're not doing yourself any service here. You are certainly hurting your opportunity to sell more of these videos. And by the way, he couldn't have been more clear that it's non-manipulative ways to move people to action. I never heard from them, but sometime later my phone rang and it was a representative from Robert Cialdini's office calling to thank me on behalf of Dr. Cialdini. And she said, because of the email you sent to Stanford, they're changing the marketing of all of our materials. And I was just like, wow, that is so cool. And before she hung up, she said, if your company is ever looking for a guest speaker, he travels the world and speaks on this topic. And as fate would have it, I sat next to the woman who booked our speakers and planned our events. So I made a transfer of the call. And as fate would have it, it was the summer of 2004, and he was in Columbus, Ohio, several times to speak to the insurance agents. And that was the start of my lengthy relationship with him and his organization.
Awesome. That's really cool. I love that. I think by doing what's right, which you helped out, right? You saw a mistake, you pointed it out, you're able to build not just a relationship, but kind of a life out of this. And that's really awesome. That's a great example of how doing the right thing sometimes is influence enough for people to be persuaded to do what's in all of our best interest, huh?
Well, and to that point, I'd like to say that I really enjoy it when people try to tell me that stuff you teach, it's manipulation, because all I need to do when that question or that pushback comes is share that story. And I think it shows the integrity that I have. If it weren't for the word manipulation, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing. I take it that seriously that we need to do this in an ethical, upright manner.
Awesome. I totally agree. And I think that's really that best example. So as we move here, and let's be a little bit more tactical, one of the things that I know is really important for most sales professionals, obviously, is the memorable first meeting. And you say clearly in the book, right, people do judge a book by its cover. So talk to us about that and how we can be more influential right from the start.
One of the things, and it's very easy to do, that a lot of people miss is getting a third-party introduction. Now, if I were speaking at a conference, or Phil, if you were speaking at a conference, without a doubt, you would hand and I would hand somebody a short bio that someone could introduce us. And that's perfectly natural. And in that bio, they would say things that hopefully would make people go, wow, I can hardly wait to hear Phil speak. I can hardly wait to hear Brian speak. But quite frankly, if you or I got up and said those things about ourselves, people might say, you sound like you're bragging. Come on, I don't want to listen to this. But it's completely natural third party. Now, think about when you're going to have your first meeting. Why aren't we employing that strategy more often? That, Phil, if I were to come to you for a first meeting, I would ask somebody that knows us, somebody that you respect, or maybe somebody higher in an organization, to send an email or some information in advance of that meeting, but hopefully close to the meeting, because I would want you to read that and then in short order see me and start to hear my conversation with you. But that will start to change your thinking. In the absence of that, you may just be wondering, well, who's this guy Brian? And I don't know if you're going to go look at my LinkedIn or look at my website. But when that third party does that for you, that makes a world of difference to have a really strong first meeting. You want to create excitement that person is looking forward to meeting you.
Wow. I've never thought about that, Brian. That's very interesting. Having a third party introduce you in a first meeting makes so much sense, because I've sat around the room and, right, well, here's Phil. He's the sales guy for XYZ company. Or here's Phil. He's going to try to sell us something. Well, that doesn't help anybody. I mean, that's the opposite of influence. Then we're at a disadvantage. We're like 6 steps behind,
right,
instead of moving 6 steps ahead. So how do we convince someone, Brian, that it's in their best interest to actually do that? Because that sounds so obvious now that you say it, but how do we get someone to actually do it?
Well, you have them read my book so they understand the details. Well, seriously, if you were to read the book or you were to listen to this conversation and say, that's a great idea, now you have to have a persuasive conversation with maybe that trusted third party who can make the introduction, or maybe it's that person who you report to. If you have done things that have benefited those folks, reciprocity would probably dictate that they would want to help you. But I think the key here is make it as easy as possible. So, Phil, if I were going to ask you to make that third-party introduction, I would also say, Phil, the last thing I want you to do is add to an already busy day and wonder what you should say about me. Would it be helpful if I gave you 2 or 3 short paragraphs to make that introduction? And then you're like, absolutely. And then you just take it, you massage it a little bit so that it sounds like the words that you would use, but then you can fire that off on my behalf. And I will tell you this, the first time I really began to employ this strategy, I was traveling through the state of Illinois with a sales rep. who frankly thought what I was teaching was a little bit of BS. And the night before we were going to go start visiting the insurance agents, and we were out and we were having some beers, and he turns to me and he says, I got to tell you, that email that John, my boss, that email that John sent, he goes, it was actually really good because he was CC'd on the emails to these agents. So I said to him, I said, well, I'll let you in on a secret. I wrote the email. And he was like, are you kidding? And I said, nobody knows me like me. I know exactly what I want those agents to know and understand about me so we can have successful sales calls. At the end of the week, he sent an email to his boss and he said, I was wrong. Brian's right. What he teaches made a huge difference.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. Well, that pass through of authority is so critical. I know that, as I work with companies myself, I like the founder to be able to introduce me, because then all of their authority is then bestowed upon me, right? It's almost like stepping right into their spotlight, and that's so important. So talk to us about authority and how that matters when we talk about persuasion, Brian.
Well, when we talk about the principle of authority, that tells us that we look to people who have superior wisdom or expertise. We will naturally follow the lead of somebody that we view as having expertise over somebody that we don't know if they have any expertise, or maybe they don't have expertise at all. So when somebody in your organization, maybe it's a VP of sales or marketing, when that person higher than you sends something, there is some perceived authority. They got to that position because they're probably good at what they do. Even if that other party, that third party, doesn't know them, the fact that it has on that email or that letter, vice president, that says something. If you can get somebody who's a trusted third party, so that may not be in your organization, but that person is really well respected and they're connected to that other person, that also adds tremendous value because there's already relationship and trust built there with that other individual.
Yeah, that's really good. And I've seen just the opposite happen as well. If the wrong person makes that introduction, the wrong person, maybe someone who thinks they're respected but really is not, and they endorse you, that's definitely torpedoed some deals as well. So you have to be really careful of that, of using that authority in the right way.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So great. So let's move in. We've just got a couple more topics here to talk about. I mean, we could talk about the book all day. I mean, Brian, it's fantastic. You sent me a PDF, but I like it so much, I went and bought the book. I mean, I think it's really important that people get a physical copy of this book. Even I like to write in it, and that really helps me and reminds me, circle the pieces that matter. It really deepens that. You're going to say something there. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'd like to say, when you said you like to write in the book, as you work your way through the book, you're going to see that at the end of each of the chapters in the sales cycle and with the personality styles, there are questions. How will you use authority in your prospecting? How will you use consensus in your prospecting? And each of the steps in the sales cycle, when I identify what psychology is most effective, there are 2 or 3 pages for you to take notes. So I really want people, as they're reading that, to then start to bullet point, well, what will I say about myself in this bio? How will I use authority there? How can I bring consensus maybe into the marketing for our agency? So it really serves also as a workbook.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was going to say that this book absolutely makes it easy for me to use it the way that I love to use books. And you've left me lots of space open, which I love. So thank you for that. So let's talk about presentations and presenting like a professional. I mean, you and I were fortunate. We do a lot of presentations, but I know I can always get better. So talk to us about how we can use influence as we present our offer, as we have conversations with folks.
Sure. When you get into that mode where you're actually going to present, first of all, it's always good to start on the relationship side too, right? Starting a meeting by connecting on what you have in common. If unity, that principle that says, you have deep connection with somebody, just that simple reminder before you actually start presenting, where it engages those principles and makes people more open to what it is that you're going to share. But when you're presenting, people want to know that you know what you're talking about. And so again, deferring to authority, whether it's bringing in facts and figures or it's utilizing quotes, anything that will gain people's attention and add credibility to whatever it is that you're presenting, the solution that you're offering. When you can talk about the principle of consensus or social proof, that, hey, other people who are like you, they tend to go this route too. It makes it much easier for people when they can see others who are like them and successful are utilizing your product or service to be able to go along with that. So bringing those into play also really work well. And then also consistency. By referring back to what somebody has shared during the qualification process, by saying, Phil, you said it was important that, and then I start to cite some of those things, and then I clearly show you how our solution is meeting those needs that you said were important. That's employing the three different types of psychology: authority, consensus, and consistency.
Excellent, excellent, good stuff. I mean, that's all stuff that often I'll naturally use, but it's important to reinforce that and to drive that home. The refer back is really strong for me. I find that when I can refer back and then say that their assumptions were correct, or if they weren't correct, hey, looks like what we thought was the problem isn't the problem. What it really is this. Does that sound right to you? And then affirming that with, well, you know what? Many people like you would choose this, and this is the direction that they would go. Does that make sense to you? We're able to move that forward. So I really think that's great. And that moves us into the close here. The closing, I think, is for many. I mean, I've read books, the doorknob close, the Ben Franklin close, but I like closing with influence. So talk to us, Brian, about that and why that honestly is probably the most easy way to close without being the most pushy.
Well, I'll say this. When it comes to closing, obviously you're not going to make a sale if you don't close, but you don't start there. And so that used to be the question that was asked most often by agents when they would go through some of the workshops I conducted while I was with the insurance company. What's the best way to close? And I would always tell them the best way to close starts the moment you meet somebody and you shake their hand and you look them in the eye. Now, that's a little bit of a days gone by right now in this world of COVID. But what I was really telling them is it's the start of the relationship. It's getting to that position where they like you and you like them, which makes you want to serve them. And then everything begins to build there. You've gained trust and all of those. So that when you get to the point where you are trying to close, it's not feeling like somebody is closing you, but you're having a natural part of this sales conversation that's leading to the culmination of, Phil, why don't we go ahead and do business together? And two of the bits of psychology that are most effective there are that principle of consistency, by hearkening back to what it is that you said that you need, Phil, and I'm clearly showing you that we're doing the things you said that you need. If I have actively engaged the what's called upfront close, by learning very early in the sales process exactly what it's going to take for you to make a switch. And then I, again, point that out because you don't want to say one thing and then do another. And then certainly scarcity, not in a fear-mongering way, but honestly alerting somebody to what they may lose if they don't go ahead and do this deal. What are the things that they might miss out on that might make them worse off? And people will work hard to avoid losing as opposed to gaining. So those two principles are especially important when you're attempting to ultimately close the sale and get the contract signed.
Yeah, definitely. I've found that as well. Those are really, really key points there. Hitting exactly what they need. You can't help but say yes. If it actually solves my problem, well, of course, it just makes perfect sense to me that we would close. So Brian, as we kind of wrap this up here, what are some of the mistakes, the more common mistakes, and how do we overcome them when we're trying to use persuasion when we sell?
Well, I would say one of the common mistakes is people don't early in the sales process really find out what it's going to take for that person to make a switch and engage that principle of consistency. I mean, just be very clear to them and say something along the lines of, Phil, I know it's probably not your favorite thing, and I'll use insurance as an example. It's probably not your favorite thing to have to go out and buy new insurance, not something you do every year because you don't like doing it. It's kind of the necessary evil, and you probably don't want to spend any more time doing this than you have to. So I want to put a proposal on the table that you let me know exactly what it's going to take for you to make a switch. I mean, I need to understand that very clearly. And if I can't do that, I will remove myself from this. That's one less insurance agent that you need to deal with. Is that fair? And most people are going to say, yeah, that sounds fair. And then I am going to work really hard to make sure that my offer meets all of the things that you say you need. I can reference back to that. Phil, remember when we met and you said we needed to do A, B, and C? Well, I think you're going to find by the end of our presentation that we've done A, B, and C, and we've actually done a couple of other things that are going to really enhance your insurance coverage. I think you're going to love it. But I've planted that seed. I've reminded you that you said certain things needed to happen. So people miss that, and that's really important. Another thing that people miss out on is they start to focus on this principle of liking by trying to get that other person to like them. And they really should go in and say, how can I come to like this other person? Because the more I get to know you and like you, Phil, the harder I will work for you. The less opportunity there is for manipulation to ever come into the equation, because I wouldn't manipulate my friends. I know you wouldn't manipulate your friends. So we work hard to come to know and like the people that we're serving, and that begins to change the entire dynamic. So those are two simple things that I think a lot of people don't focus on nearly enough.
I like that. I think that's really important that we do that. It's not rocket science, but it's not always done. And if we take the time to do that, we will get a lot more sales. And I would say, Brian, you've got a ton more packed in here. So what's one more nugget that people can use right now today to do a better job of persuasively selling?
I would say stop telling people what to do and start asking. When you tell people what to do, they don't own that. But when you ask and they verbalize that. So examples that I give in the book, a lot of times somebody will think, well, as an insurance agent, I think they're going to want to do business with me because I'm local. The reality is, Phil, that we live in a very online world, and somebody might say, I don't care if you're in my town or if you're the next state over. I can get you anytime I need to by phone, email, text, or we can hop on Zoom or something like that. So they may not think that that's valuable. So it's wrong for the agent to step in and say, this is a reason people want to do business with us. What would be the better tactic would be to just ask the question, Phil, is it important for you that if you needed to, you could be sitting down within 15 or 20 minutes looking your insurance agent in the eye to have a conversation about something? And most people would say, yeah, I hadn't thought of it, but yes, I would like to be able to sit down with my agent, look him or her in the eye. Or maybe the question is, Phil, is it important to you that you support local businesses? Maybe you're that small business owner. Now that raises it to the top where you're thinking, well, yeah, I'm a business owner. I like when people support me. But when I ask that question and you tell me those answers, if I refer back to them throughout the sales process or the presentation, it carries more weight because you remember saying that. And most people don't go against what they've said, what they've done, what they believe, and what they value.
Wow. Asking, is it important for you? Validating that, getting them to say it is a great way to persuade. I really like that. That's not manipulation. That's persuasion. And that helps us sell all the time. So Brian, congrats again, man, on the book. I'm super excited for folks to get a copy of this. I mean, really, $20 to get a copy of the book or less, depending on the price on Amazon. A Persuasively Sell. Brian says it's for relationship-driven insurance agents, but I'll tell you what, as a non-insurance agent, it is still useful to do that. I just love that he zeroed in on that. The examples are great. The fact that I can use it as a workbook is super helpful, Brian. I think it's just a fantastic tool for people who want to sell more effectively. So thank you for writing that, and thank you so much for spending some time with me today.
It's my pleasure, and I appreciate you having me on the show again.
My pleasure.
You've just gotten the inside scoop on the Inside Sales Show, hosted by Phil Gerbershak. For more content like this, visit InsideSalesShow.com, or to never miss an episode, subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Your mileage may vary. Past performance is not indicative of future results. Don't forget to tip your waitress. See you next time.